Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today's Thursday, June 13, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The Supreme Court will soon decide whether a local government can make it a crime to involuntarily live outside and unsheltered. This is going to have significant impact on the homeless. Black mayors have been focused on this. We'll talk with the president, the African American Mayors Association, the mayor of Montgomery, Alabama. An Oklahoma judge finds a black Tulsa lieutenant did not cover up a shooting. We'll talk to that officer, Marcus Harper, who was acquitted today. President Joe Biden faces the first lawsuit over the new asylum crackdown at the border. The Supreme Court rejected a challenge targeting the availability of the abortion pill. Vice President Kamala Harris talked about the ruling. A DOJ investigation finds that the city of Phoenix and its police department practices brutality and racial bias. Also, this weekend, there's an equity march in D.C. We'll talk to one of the organizers who says the march is to get the president's attention. The Annie E. Casey Foundation's 2024 Kids Court Report, Count Report highlights why some kids struggle at school. We'll be talking to one of their executives. Also, fan-based creator Isaac Hayes will be here to update us on the latest raise and also what they are doing differently for black content creators. Donald Trump craps on Milwaukee. Black folks, y'all might want to remember that when it's time to vote. It's time to bring the funk. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Mayors across the country are preparing for the Supreme Court's ruling in a case regarding the homeless. The case is about whether ticketing homeless people is deemed cruel and unusual and violates the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution. Several involuntarily homeless people in Grants Pass, Oregon, challenged the city's ban on public camping. Mayors want to ensure the safety of everyone. As they articulate the ruling, first of all, as they anticipate the ruling, they are working on solutions to manage it however it comes down. Joining us right now, Stephen Reed, the mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, and the new president of the African American Mayors Association. Glad to have you here. This, of course, is a significant issue all across the country, Mayor Reed. It is one that LA Mayor Karen Bass had as the centerpiece of her campaign, and we've seen this. How are mayors preparing for this ruling?
Roland, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Really appreciate all the work that you do, you and your team, to spotlight issues such as this. This is a problem, and I want to commend Mayor Bass for bringing it to our attention at the African American Mayors Association to discuss its impact on not only our cities, but disproportionately on Black and brown people in this country. And so when you consider the potential outcome of what the Supreme Court may do here, if they overturn the lower court's decision, it could make homelessness worse. It will allow cities and states to criminalize homelessness. And then from our standpoint, we want them to uphold that court decision so that it will, prohibit cities and states from criminalizing those that are homeless.
And again, now we're talking about the potential, again, if people start handing out tickets. Now we're talking about filling up jails. Now we talk, and let's be clear, that's going to actually require more money than dealing with mental health services. And so this is one of those examples of people who make decisions, public policy makers, as opposed to cutting services, not dealing with the root causes of homelessness. And now all of a sudden you want to use a law enforcement mechanism to treat a problem that's not a law enforcement problem.
Exactly. And, I think Mayor Bass put it best when she discussed the crack epidemic and how that led to the over-incarceration of so many people in Black and brown communities. And her point was we weren't calling it mass incarceration at the time, but that's what it was. And you had a lot of African-American elected officials that supported those crime initiatives. We don't want to make the same mistake in this situation. And when you consider that in many cities, many of our homeless are veterans, many of them are people that are working but cannot afford to have stable housing. Many are foster children. Others are coming from traumatic situations where the addiction doesn't lead them to homelessness, but the addiction is a result of them being without a home. That's an issue. And then certainly, as we see the rising population of Black women over the age of 60, in particular in Los Angeles, who are in the service industry but cannot afford housing, that has a ripple effect, not only in large cities such as that, but in even mid-sized cities such as Montgomery, Alabama, and others. And I think it's up to us to make sure that we're looking at solutions. We're advocating at the state and federal level, whether it be with Health and Human Services, whether it be with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and others, to come up with solutions that work to address our veterans that are homeless and those that, again, need just transitional housing, when we know there are models out there from tiny homes and others that are working in communities all around the nation.
Well, again, it's going to be a decision that mayors are going to have to deal with regardless, because if they choose to say, hey, you can't ticket them, you still got to deal with the problem of an increasing number of homeless people in the country. You've got a housing crisis in this country because you've got private equity owning a significant number of lots as well, jacking up rents. And so again, the problem of homelessness is not a simple fix. It has to be looked at in a holistic manner.
It really does. And I want to thank former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge, for some of her initiatives while leading the agency. And I think it helps to have people who certainly are coming out of Congress in those roles, but also people who understand that we're trying to build compassionate communities. We don't want to criminalize these things the way they were done decades ago. And I think when we consider what some of the challenges are and who these populations of homelessness are around our cities, we have to think about it a little bit differently. We have to make sure that we're looking at this as a health issue. We have to make sure we're looking at this from the standpoint of wellness, not from the standpoint of criminality. And so, you know, when you think about whatever the picture is in your community who's homeless, let's make sure that we're being fair and objective here, because as mayors, we want clean cities. As mayors, we want healthy and prosperous communities, but we don't want to fill up our jails with nonviolent offenders, and we don't want to jail people, incarcerate people who have an illness, or even worse, are really just on a hard time or having a hard chapter right now. And so because of this Supreme Court case, we're looking at putting them in jail, and we're looking at locking people up in a way that we may come to regret sooner rather than later.
All right, Mayor Reed, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And I wore this short shirt today just for you.
Listen, I should have known better. I should have known that there was a hook in here somewhere. I'll let you slide over this time. Until the next time.
Oh, you're going to let me slide? Good. Long as you don't have that purple and gold crap in the background when you come do the show, we good.
Hey, look, I'll make sure I wear the purple tie next time.
Okay, try it. All right. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Always. Thank you.
All right, my panel here, Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show on Sirius XM Radio out of D.C., Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University, also host of the Black Table on the Black Star Network out of D.C., Long Victoria Burke, Black Press USA out of Arlington, Virginia. The reality here, Greg, is that this decision is still going to force folks to have to deal with the problem of homelessness in this country. And what we've seen federal lawmakers and state lawmakers just keep kicking the can down the road, forcing this on local folks. Then they want to complain about the problem when you have to address, again, who's homeless, significant number of veterans, folk with mental illness. So, but then if you don't want to provide any mental resources to folks, then how are you going to deal with the mental illness problem? And so this is what this country is all about. We whine about one thing, but don't want to confront the lack of a social safety net to deal with folk who are trapped in this issue.
That's absolutely right. And it's very important to understand. This is a useful moment, I think, to make a distinction between those who will call themselves progressives or even liberals and those who would consider themselves to have a left politics. Progressives and liberals will often talk about individual rights and clusters of rights and helping people be able to acquire and protect their individual rights. So a person who is unhoused and housing insecure has the individual right to be protected. Those who would consider themselves with a more left politics would say that, no, there is a responsibility for the state, for the society, for the government to provide collective rights as well. How does that apply to what we're looking at right now? Well, the way you walked through with Mayor Reed, and parenthetically, he can never forget that the most famous one-time resident of his city, of course, wasn't Alpha Martin Luther King, but Montgomery Housing Authority last December put out a statement. They're trying to create more affordable housing. There's a new complex called Columbus Square Apartments. They're trying to create some more affordable housing, but it stands almost on the footprint of the old Trenholm Court housing complex there near downtown Montgomery. That has been converted to luxury condos. And that's the problem. The solution to those who are unhoused and housing insecure is more housing. But there is a battle in this country between, as you explained or walked through with the mayor, there is a battle between the developers, those who will make money by any means necessary, and those who are the most insecure when it comes to jobs, when it comes to not only employment, but housing, and who stands between the least of these in a society and those who will get a buck by any means necessary. That is the politics of the state. And that's why at the state level, the local level, and the federal level, there must be an intervention to solve this problem. And the solution to homelessness is housing.
Yeah, it's housing, Reese, but again, it's also for a lot of the people who suffer from mental illness. You have to deal with that. Look, this is real simple. Either the folks are going to be treated, or they're going to be treated in a facility and housed there, or they're going to be simply untreated and they're going to be on the streets. Policymakers have to deal with that, which means you're going to have to allocate resources to confront the problem. It's not about just saying, sure, let's throw folks in jail, because you know what's going to happen? If you throw them in jail, you got to provide mental health services.
Right. Well, I mean, the reality is that our society just doesn't value taking care of people who are in the situation financially, or as you pointed out, due to mental health issues, where they are unhoused. We don't make it a point to have good public housing policy, which, by the way, is not just good for those who are unhoused, but those who are looking for affordable housing. Luxury condos is not affordable housing. What we've seen happen around the country with collusion among property managers to increase the cost of housing to ridiculous amounts for it to be anti-competitive is not good housing policy. But we as a society have made a choice that when it comes to homelessness, the solution is to just get it out of our face, not to actually solve the root causes. It's the same thing how we deal with crime. So I think that this is an empathy chip that's missing in our society, that doesn't like the idea of giving people something for free, even though that's not really what it is, when it certainly is cheaper to do things like house people, to do things like provide mental health services than it is to incarcerate, than it is to over-police our communities. But that's the way that we are operating, because people believe that poverty is punishment and it's appropriate punishment. People believe that being unhoused is an appropriate punishment for whatever life choices you make, as opposed to a public policy decision.
I mean, then you can't sit here, Lauren, and complain about the homeless, but they say, well, why can't they just get up and go get a job? And then you don't assess, okay, exactly what is that particular family's problem. You got a significant number of children in the country who are homeless. You got vets who are homeless. Oh, what happened to all the people who love the military, but it's amazing when they forget about them when they're no longer of any use?
Yeah, well, you know, to riff a little bit off of what Reese just said, we're in a society that is survival of the fittest. We do not care about poor people. We really don't have a policy for homeless people in most of these cities other than to make them disappear, which is what Mayor Muriel Bowser did right before Memorial Day, where she moved out 2 homeless encampments in Washington, D.C. right before Memorial Day, which always seems to happen right before a holiday. I feel like she doesn't like people who are tourists to come into the city and see homeless people. But she's got plenty of money to give to Ted Leontis for a baseball stadium, $515 million for a baseball stadium. And so when I think of things like Cop City and the baseball stadium or the whatever stadium arena for the Wizards and the Capitals in D.C. for a multi-billionaire owner, by the way. And then I think about things like the appropriation that we just saw in April, late April, that went to Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel to the tune of over $90 billion. We can find money for things that we want to find money for, but we don't care about homeless people. When you have a bunch of millionaires making decisions in Congress in particular, these are the decisions that you get. They're not prioritizing the working class, the homeless person, the person who works at Target, the cash register, who needs to find a place to live. We do not care about these people in our public policy. And people like that, it's very hard for them to get elected and be the decision-making folks in our public policy. You see AIPAC, by the way, targeting 2 progressive members. Cori Bush in particular comes to mind when it comes to homelessness policy and affordability with regard to housing. That's who they want out of Congress. That's who they target to get out of Congress. So at some point, somebody, and it's probably going to be, of course, the Democratic Party, has to prioritize policy and the people who want to push the policies that have to do with affordable housing, and stop sending billions of our tax money overseas before these problems are fixed.
Yeah, but the reality is, if the streets
were paved with gold, then I wouldn't mind it so much. But we spend a lot of money, a lot of our tax money, going out of here, and then when we see people living in tents in these cities, nobody does anything about it. That makes no sense.
Yeah, but the reality is a lot of the tax money that is actually not going out. It's actually
yes, it is.
No, it's not. Follow me here. A lot of those tax dollars are actually staying in, but they're going to defense contractors. So when you look at literally 75 to 80% of the money to Ukraine, it's actually not even going to Ukraine, it's staying in. So what we have to deal with is also the military-industrial complex, which, and remember, in every single congressional district in the country, there's a military contractor, and they did that for a reason. So again, the problem, the fundamental issue that we have in the country is that when you, first of all, when you talk about, let's just say you're moved federal, even if you deal with state, you have folks like Governor Greg Abbott in Texas who will whine and complain about, oh, after every shooting, it's a mental health problem, but then they cut mental health services. And so we complain about the thing that drives me crazy in this country is that the mentality that we have is we really only confront problems when they explode. When they explode, that's what we do. We don't actually, I can't think of many proactive policies that we do. We wait till stuff explodes. We wait till it is a mass emergency, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, we got to figure this thing out. When it comes to the homeless, this has been a growing problem. I've walked through on this show numerous times the housing problem that we have in this country, which was precipitated in the previous decade. It's now continued. The cuts when it comes to mental health, that's because, in the 1970s, you actually had community health centers in cities and counties. Then they started slashing a lot of those community health centers, and so all of a sudden, folk didn't have any places to go. Now we have to turn schools into community health centers, and they can't even educate because we're trying to do everything there as well. And so policymakers, and that goes back to Reagan being president, that goes back to many Republican leaders in states as well, slash, oh, big government, but then want to complain about the problems in these issues. And so, to your point, you can't whine and complain about walking past a homeless encampment if you don't want to deal with how is there a homeless encampment. And that's the problem. In this country, we don't want to deal with the how and the why. What we want is for the stuff to disappear so people can have a wonderful, nice time, and as you say, go to ball games and stuff along those lines. And yeah, we'll give a multi-billionaire, and there are other billionaires who are also owners of the team, lots of money for a stadium, but then go, yeah, we don't know what we're gonna do about homeless folks and mental health. This is why I keep saying to folks, if you got a problem with public policy, then you have a problem with the politicians who do nothing about it. And the only way you change one, or actually the only way you change both, is you have to change one or the other to get it done. And it only happens by doing this here. So people also have got to stop complaining about problems and saying, oh, how we need solutions, and begin to say, we got to put people in place who will actually be the change makers, which means that we got to stop having black, look, everybody else, they're going to do whatever. I'm talking to black people. We got to stop having 18, 20, 24, 25, 30% turnout and voting our numbers to get rid of politicians in order to change the policy to confront the problems. But that requires some work. Going to a break, we'll be right back. Clarence Thomas, talk about lap dancing for dollars. This is literally the most corrupt Supreme Court justice in American history. We'll tell you the latest how this man has been bought off by billionaires. Next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairs of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today, there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the fourth leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP. Get others to come. Get a bus, get a van, get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Devon Frank.
I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
How many times will Clarence Thomas get flued out? ProPublica has been reporting consistently on how corrupt Clarence Thomas is. Check this out. Here we go to my iPad. Harlan Crow, the billionaire, provided Clarence Thomas at least 3 previously undisclosed private jet trips, Senate probe finds. In the story, this is what they say. Billionaire political donor Harlan Crow provided at least 3 undisclosed private jet trips to Clarence Thomas in recent years. An investigation by the Senate Judiciary Committee, Democrats have found. The flights, which were detailed by Crow's lawyer in response to inquiries from the committee, took the justice to destinations, including the region near Glacier National Park in Montana and Thomas's hometown in Georgia. Now, ProPublica, they're the ones who launched an investigation into numerous undisclosed gifts that the billionaire Harlan Crow has given Clarence Thomas, including private school tuition for a relative, luxury vacations virtually every year for more than 2 decades. They say right here, it's possible more revelations are yet to come. The office of the panel's chair, Senator Dick Durbin, said that a report detailing the full findings of committee Democrats' investigation will be released later in the summer. Reese, there is no reason in the world Democrats should not be making this thing bigger. They should not be playing games. They should be proposing a massive bill that confronts the lack of ethics in the United States Supreme Court. There are 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. Legislative and executive, they have ethics rules. Supreme Court, they govern themselves. That is simply unacceptable.
Yeah, but I think Democrats generally do a piss poor job of communicating the importance of the courts, of communicating the way that the courts have halted so many of the initiatives that they've tried to do, even things that they've gotten through executive action or in laws. And so, yeah, I mean, of course they're going to fumble the bag. And then, of course, Clarence Thomas is going to continue to be pimped out because who's going to check him, boo? Like, there's no rules. There's no laws when it comes to overseeing the Supreme Court. They could do whatever the hell they want to do. And this whole notion of self-governance and, norms and impartiality and all that kind of stuff, that's been bullshit from the start. But now we're seeing with such a stacked conservative right-wing radical court just how insidious this is and exactly how there is no level playing field. There is no parity between defendants and plaintiffs in front of the Supreme Court. They have their agenda, they're going to enact it, and they're going to get rich while trying it.
When I look at this chart here, Lauren, this was from the folks that fixed the court. I mean, literally, $4.8 million in gifts to Supreme Court justices in the last 19 years. Sam Alito got $170,000. Antonin Scalia got $210,000. The other 14 justices got $333,000. Clarence Thomas by himself got $4 million. This man is bought and paid for. I don't care who you are. You cannot deny one Supreme Court justice getting $4 million in gifts?
Yeah, and also, I mean, it is amazing to me. We have rules for everybody. Members of Congress, judges on other levels, attorneys have certain rules of ethics. And yet the Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, has no rules for ethics or standards of ethics or anything else, apparently. Also, I really need the three justices, the three associate justices, Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, and of course, Ketanji Brown Jackson, to stop recusing themselves in cases. Stop recusing yourself from cases. I mean, these conservative judges don't recuse themselves from anything, no matter whether or not there's a conflict of interest or not. They don't follow any rules. And so why is everybody else following the rules while they do whatever the heck they want? And of course, Clarence Thomas is, of course, the worst example. He will continue to be. And when this report comes out, absolutely nothing will happen, because that's just the way it goes. Whether the Democrats message it or not, what's going to happen is the Chief Justice, John Roberts, is going to completely ignore what that information is, as he's been doing this entire time. There's no reason for him to change. And the only other group of people I can think of who just sort of get away with anything, and there's no rules and nobody even pretends that there are any rules, is actually journalists, because the First Amendment sort of allows you to sort of almost do almost anything. I mean, there are no standards, but the fact that there's no standards for the Supreme Court and there's standards for other judges and attorneys in the country makes absolutely no sense.
I don't throw the word around corrupt loosely, but Harlan Crow wasn't your friend before you joined the Supreme Court. I mean, look, I understand if you grew up with somebody, went to college with somebody, and let's say after college you became friends with somebody and they did what they did and they became a billionaire. I totally get that. No, bruh. They were like, oh yeah, we can throw some gifts his way. We already know, it's on record where he complained about the salaries of Supreme Court justices, how he was desperate for money, how he wanted them to allow them to give more speeches and things along those lines. This is a man who is billionaires are subsidizing his lifestyle. They have paid for his mama's house. They are sitting here, they paid for his RV. They own him. He is one of 9 the most powerful people in the country. He is bought and paid for, and Democrats should be on his ass for being so corrupt, and they should have hauled John Roberts' ass down. Nah, that little letter, yeah, I'm not going to show up. No. Haul his ass down there, or have the guts to say, we're going to cut your funding off, because there's no explanation for one man getting $4 million and everybody else getting $330,000. He has no ethics, no morals, no values. He is straight up being pimped. He is prostituting himself for conservative billionaires.
It's true. It is true. Unlike somebody like Jay-Z, who made his money by digging into the greatest pathologies and anti-black speech to make himself plenty of money so that he could earn the privilege of singing it or rapping at Tom Brady's birthday party, or going to Pennsylvania to lobby for siphoning off public dollars by the millions to help some anti-black billionaires and raid the public school coffers. At least Sean Carter earned his through the old-fashioned way, minstrelsy. In the case of Clarence Thomas, Clarence Thomas is exactly what you said, Roland, and it's very interesting in this particular context because not only is he completely owned by Harlan Crow and his friends, and like I said, there's nothing more pathetic than to see a Negro who has been bought by some folks who you know are talking about him as soon as he leaves earshot, perhaps even with his wife. But Harlan Crow paid for these trips, and the documents that you referred to that were given to Dick Durbin and the Senate Judiciary Committee only cover 7 years, and they were turned over by Crow in exchange for a promise from the committee not to ask for any more documents. So you can imagine if you had all the documents, what we would see from this wholly owned subsidiary. And as far as the policy making goes, as you and Reese were talking about what Democrats can and can't do, Well, we know that last summer, Sheldon Whitehouse wrote some legislation, this ethics bill, that the Republicans killed yesterday. And of course, little Lynn Graham, in responding to why the Republicans would not sign on to legislation which should be a no-brainer to say that there should be some ethics rules in place for the Supreme Court, he accused the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee of engaging in ideological warfare and just mad because they don't like the ideology of the court. Well, little Lynn, you're right. What people don't like is purebred corruption. Finally, as you said, as you're addressing the question of the unhoused and the crisis we face there, this isn't going to change until there's a critical mass moment. And we may very well be approaching one, because between the Christian soldier Alito and the wholly owned subsidiary Clarence Thomas, these two are acting with such impunity that it might actually piss enough people off to finally get involved. But I guess time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here. But I mean, again, this man is just grossly corrupt. Okay, and he is just living his best life. Y'all can't talk about gold diggers. Y'all can't complain about no woman being a gold digger, because if you look up gold digger in the dictionary, it's gonna be a photo of smiling ass Clarence Thomas who's sitting here saying, "I will shake it for dollars." And that's the fact. He is bought and paid for, and you damn right I'm using this language on purpose, because there is no way you can explain $4 million in gifts. There's no way you can explain, oh, my bad, I forgot to list those trips. Let me sit here and let me add those to I'm sorry, I didn't understand the documentation for my wife. But your ass making decisions in complex legal cases, but you don't understand some basic ass income reporting standards? Really? Really? Absolutely. He is a legal thought.
Ooh.
That's what he is. And he has no business being on the damn Supreme Court, because he's corrupt. We come back. We're going to talk about a case out of Oklahoma. A brother was found not guilty today. They sure were going after this brother on the police force, because they don't want black cops who stand up for black folks. We'll talk to him next. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support us in what we do, y'all. Be sure to join the Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible to do the work that we do. You can join the Bring the Funk fan club by, of course, sending your check and money orders. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back. A lot of y'all have been asking me about the pocket squares that we have available on our website. You see me rocking the Shabori pocket square right here. It's all about looking different. And look, summertime is coming up. Y'all know, I keep trying to tell fellas, change your look, please. You can't wear athletic shoes every damn wear. So if you're putting on linen suits, if you're putting on some summer suits, have a whole different look. The reason I like this particular pocket square, the Shabori, is because it's sort of like a flower and looks pretty cool here, versus the traditional boring silk pocket squares. But also I like being a little different as well. So this is why we have these custom-made feather pocket squares on the website as well. My sister actually designed these after a few years ago. I was in this battle with Steve Harvey at Essence, and I saw this at a St. Jude fundraiser. I saw this feather pocket square, and I said, well, I got some ideas. So I hit her, and she sent me about 30 different ones. And so this completely changes your look. Now, some of you men out there, I had some dudes say, oh man, I can't wear that. well, if you ain't got swagger, that's not my problem. But if you're looking for something different to spruce up your look, fellas, ladies, if y'all looking to get your man a good gift, I've run into brothers all across the country with the feather pocket squares saying, see, check mine out. And so it's always good to see them. And so this is what you do. Go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. You can order Shibori pocket squares or the custom-made pocket squares. Now, for the Shiboris, we're out of a lot of the different colors, and I think we're down to about 200 or 300. So you want to get your order in as soon as you can, because here's what happened. I got these several years ago, and the Japanese company signed a deal with another company, and I bought them before they signed that deal, and so I can't get access to any more from the company in Japan that makes them. And so get yours now. So come summertime, when I see y'all at Essence, y'all could be looking fly with the Shibori pocket square or the custom-made pocket square. Again, RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. Go there now.
Me, Sherry Shepard, with Sammy Roman. I'm Dr. Robin B., pharmacist and fitness coach, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
An Oklahoma jury finds a black Tulsa police lieutenant did not cover up the actions of a fellow officer. Marcus Harper was found not guilty today of all charges stemming from his actions after a fellow former officer's vehicle was involved in a gang-related shooting. Why was he on trial? Well, folks in Tulsa say because this is a brother who stands up for black folks. Marcus Harper joins us right now. Marcus, glad to have you on the show. Let's see, do we have Marcus there?
I'm right here, Roland.
Okay, all right, glad to have you on the show. Although I don't know why you wore that tired shirt, but we gonna leave that alone. Yeah, you think I wasn't gonna say nothing? So, one, you got to feel good being acquitted of these charges.
Man, yeah, but I tell you, Roland, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted physically. I'm exhausted mentally. This has been almost 4 years in the making. And I tell you, even though this burden has been lifted off of my shoulders right now, man, it feels like it's still on me, you know?
So what really went on here? And did you have support from police unions and others? It seems like you were fighting this battle on your own.
Well, you know, Roland, it's odd, you know. I had people that supported me. I had fellow officers that would support me. You know, the union actually did, you know, the FOP actually did support me. The Tulsa Black Officers Coalition supported me. But in a situation like this, when an administration is used to running roughshod, that's the best way to describe it, and people see what happens, you know, when you stand up and you speak out, because that comes with a price. And nobody wants to be next. Nobody wants to be next.
Now, this is a report from one of the television stations in Tulsa. They said that that LaToya Dyke was fired from the Tulsa Police Department, pled guilty to a separate crime of illegally buying her boyfriend a gun. You've been on leave. You can go to my iPad, Henry. You've been on leave for 4 years.
Yeah,
and I mean, my goodness. I mean, that's a very, very long time to be on leave and having your future hanging in the balance.
Yeah, it is. That's a very long time. But, you know, what I tried to do along the way, you know, was trust the process, look at it like everything is necessary, and just kind of took it just one day at a time. You know, taking it one day at a time and staying prayed up and friends praying for me. What ends up happening is that one day turns to 3 days, that 3 days turns to 3 months, 3 months turns to 9 months, and next thing you know, here we are. And I get a chance to tell my story in the courtroom. I actually testified today at 9:30 and was acquitted of all charges by 11:30.
I mean, in looking at this story right here, it says he was charged with helping a fellow officer and friend, LaToya Dice, of concealing evidence after her car was involved in a shooting. Dice testified she loaned her car to her boyfriend's brother, who then got into a shootout near 61st and Peoria, and Dice's car had bullet holes. Dice called Harper for help. He showed up in a police uniform, examined the evidence, interviewed those involved in the shooting, then left and never called the police or made a report. And you said point blank, no, I committed no crime. You testified that you didn't know what happened when Dice called him, and she didn't tell Harper the true story. Harper said he told Dice to call police immediately and told Dice's friends to tell the police the truth. Harper said he never looked inside Dice's car for any evidence, went to work, and then told his boss about it the next day. Then the judge ruled that there was no evidence that you covered up a crime. The fact that they've been coming after you for 4 years, I mean, to see how quickly this decision came down, you got to ask, how in the hell were you waiting for 4 years on this?
Well, let me back it up for you just a little bit. When this investigation first started, the federal government actually was in charge of the investigation. That started in September of 2020. March of 2021, there was a federal grand jury impaneled, and I was the target of that federal grand jury. And as a result of that grand jury, I wasn't indicted. So I actually thought, hey, I'm going to get a phone call and I'm going to come back to work any day now. Because, you know, in the grand jury, there's only one side of the case that's put on, that's from the prosecution side. So you don't get a chance to go in and defend yourself if you're a target. But never got the phone call, Then I find out, you know, that my case has been stayed to the state attorney general for him to assign a district attorney somewhere in the state. So my case goes to Oklahoma County, which is the largest county in the state, and he kept the case for 3 months and said there was nothing there. Then it goes to Tulsa County, the county that the actual crime took place in, and he recused from the case. Then it goes to Rogers County, and Rogers County came up with these charges.
So wait, hold up. Yeah, so it's in your main county, and they recuse themselves. But it goes to another county. That DA doesn't find anything. You don't get indicted by a federal grand jury. Right. Who the hell was shopping for DAs?
You know, somebody at some point is going to have to answer that question. Because that's one of the things that I want to know. It's like, why was it necessary after I was cleared by a federal grand jury that now one of your rural counties can make this case? To my knowledge, something like this has never happened in the history of the police. In my time, in my nearly 3 decades on the police department, I've never seen this happen. To include, let me make myself clear, our federal corruption scandal that took place in 2010, where we had unindicted co-conspirators named in that investigation, but their cases weren't sent to the state attorney general's office. And you can say there was a different administration, you can say this, you can say that, but man, the rules are the same, the laws are the same. I've never at once been asked to be treated differently. Man, just treat me like you treat everybody else, treat me fairly.
Do you want to return to the police force?
How can I? You know, they did this with a smirk on their face. They would come to court hearings, with a literal smirk and smile on their face, thinking that any day I was going to give in, I was going to quit. But man, I gotta. They've taken everything from me, man. Roland, this is attorney fees, having to work nearly 24/7 just to make ends meet. Man, it's been rough. I don't know how I can go back in such a hostile environment. You were trying to send me to prison. You were trying to send me to prison, and you did it with a smile on your face, knowing all along you were wrong. So, would it vindicate me to go back to work? Rona, I don't know. I mean, I really can't tell you. I have to cross that bridge when I get there,
How long have you been on the force?
Well, since I won my case, I should be technically reinstated right now. So right now it'll be about 13th. It'll be 28 years and 8 months, almost 3 decades.
28 years, 8 months. In this time, you opened a barbecue restaurant.
Well, no, I got a food truck.
I'm sorry, food truck. Got a barbecue food truck. When I was there, I didn't taste any of it, so I ain't quite.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Yes,
oh, that's right. When I came to the house. All right, that's right. That's right. I say when I'm most recent trip. So I've been from Texas. We got a check folk barbecue.
Oh yeah, always.
So you've been doing that. Your wife was on the city council. And again, both of y'all are very active, strong voices. And let's be clear, it's folks in Tulsa don't like the fact that y'all are two vocal black people.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. Exactly right.
I think you froze there.
Surprising.
Actually, hold on 1 second. Start that over again because your video froze. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So, what's amazing is all the support that I got from people that don't look like me. We don't share the same complexion, but we share the same fight for justice. And the people that had my back and that supported me, that helped me along the way. Man, I have an amazing, I'm gonna call it amazing village. My tribe was a little bit stronger than your tribe, and that's the attitude I have because people helped me along the way, and I will forever be appreciative of that, but one thing I realize is that, when you speak out, it comes with a price. It comes with a price for sure.
If you don't go back to the force, what you gonna do?
Man, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live day by day and just enjoy it and just trust the process. I feel like everything that has happened to me has been necessary. And my journey and my pain may be a lesson for somebody else, But, right now I intend on going back for a while because there's things that are owed to me. And I want those things that are owed to me. But I suspect that I'm gonna have to fight tooth and nail till I get these things back. One thing I want to mention, Roland, is that this verdict came back in 15 minutes.
Wow.
To me, it just wasn't a regular verdict. When the judge read off the charging documents, the judge told the state, you have absolutely produced no evidence to meet your burden of proof in this crime, and he said it wasn't even close. He read the second charging document and said the exact same thing. How did we get to this point?
Yep.
How did we get to this point? I don't know, man. It's just surreal. It's just surreal, and I just don't understand. I just don't see how something like this happened. Now, my co-defendant, in the case, he ended up taking a plea deal, and he did what was best for him. And I can tell you this: he's going to be my brother for life. And I'm not talking about in the police brotherhood, but we were casual friends at first. But Ananias Carson, he's my friend for life. He's my brother for life because he hung with me for as long as he did. And what happens in these situations is, the more and more you delay, the more money it costs you. So imagine not having a real income coming in. Now you have an income. You have lawyer fees and things like that on top of what your regular bills were, and you're trying to make ends meet. And sometimes you just wake up and you're like, man, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm finished. I'm done. And to be honest with you, Roland, in the beginning, when I first got arrested, I was like, hey, I'm just going to retire and walk. But then I just kind of waited and waited. And once I got my discovery and I started reading, I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And man, I tell you, it was, I'm thinking this thing's going to be done with over any day now. But when I was arrested, Roland, when I remember I mentioned about just treatment like everybody else, it is pretty much the common course. If you're being investigated and the police decide, hey, we're going to issue a warrant, there's always a courtesy call to not just other policemen, but to the person who's going to be arrested, at least to their lawyer. The police department knew that I had legal representation. The first phone call I received on November the 2nd was from Internal Affairs, and they wanted me to come downtown. And I was actually working my food truck at the time, and I asked, well, why do I need to come downtown? Well, per your agreement, you have to come. I'm like, okay, hey, I can't be there in 30 minutes. I can be there in an hour. This is at 1 o'clock on November the 2nd of 2021. So then I get a phone call 10 minutes later that says, hey, I'm not sure you know what's going on, but there's a warrant out for your arrest. So I immediately contacted my wife. I contacted my attorney. Hey, I'm being told there's a warrant out for my arrest. But then I was informed there was a 1:30 press conference on the day I was arrested. In my mind, they were trying to perk walk me, get me downtown at 1:30, have your press conference, line the press out there, and the chief of police basically said I'm the most corrupt cop nearly in the history of TPD. You were going to perk walk me, and you did not even give me a courtesy phone call to me or my attorney to let me prepare myself for a half a day to get my bond in order, to get any personal affairs I need to get in order. You did none of that. You tried to sneak me downtown and then walk me in front of a bunch of cameras. And for 4 years, well, for 2.5 years, all you did was put a narrative out there that today was proven to be totally false.
Unbelievable. Well, brother, you are free, but you still got to deal with these legal bills. You still got to deal still with that. And so is the GoFundMe still active?
Yeah, the GoFundMe is still active. My Cash App is active. And I tell you, if you can't help me out financially, keep praying for me because, hey, man, this is, you know, I had an idea of what was going to happen when I got acquitted, and I kind of had it in my mind, but it's totally different than what it was in my mind. So, you know, but my GoFundMe is still active. My Cash App is active, and any little thing helps. But like I said, if you can't support me financially, pray for me.
Well, what's your Cash App?
My Cash App is $ Marcus, capital R, Harper, Harper.
All right, control room, y'all take that down. Henry, go to my iPad. This here is the GoFundMe. This is the correct one, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, stay with Marcus Harper against injustice. Folks, the goal to raise was $200,000. Is just $3,425 there. So all of y'all who are watching and listening, please support. You'll see here under the description all of the details of this case. And the reality is what you described is what a whole lot of righteous brothers who work for police departments have had to contend with in their careers. And so we're glad that they quickly found you not guilty.
15 minutes, man. It was 15 minutes.
15 minutes. We appreciate it. We appreciate it, brother. Thanks a lot. So next time,
thank you.
Next time in Tulsa, you better have some ribs ready and some links.
I got you. You're not ready. You're not ready. Hey, thank you, Roland.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, you're welcome.
You know, as I was sitting here thinking about, as Marcus was talking, Lauren, I thought about this brother here, Renault Robinson. Here we go to my iPad. He was a co-founder of the Afro-American Patrolmen's League in Chicago. He died last year at the age of 80. And He was constantly harassed in Chicago. In fact, what they did was to penalize him, they made his beat. He had to walk an alley. And they would literally sit across the street to see if he ever left his post. And that was the job, to guard an alley. They tried to break that brother. And we talk a lot about how we need good brothers and sisters joining police departments. But when you are a community activist and when you are outspoken, it's folk in these police departments, they don't want you there. They want to silence you. And that's what was happening in Tulsa.
Out there like that exist that we don't know anything about. At least with this one, we do have an opportunity to help Marcus, and we do have the technology to do it with regard to GoFundMe, because of course in years past you didn't really know how to connect, or maybe you didn't even know about the story at all, but it does underline the importance of Black media and finding out these stories and finding out what's going on. But hazing on the job, particularly with regard to law enforcement, of course, is nothing new. And it's a shame. And it's a shame he has no recourse. There should be some recourse someplace, either locally or DOJ. But it's funny when a local, district attorney or prosecutor locks in on somebody and decides to really effectively bankrupt somebody through legal fees, which is becoming a major part of strategy, not only in politics, but in a situation like this. I think we saw the same thing with Marilyn Mosby, where you could just bankrupt somebody just for falsely accusing them, and then they have to, of course, defend themselves. And then that's how you take that person out of power. That's how you take them out of the running for doing anything. And as you could see, you just asked him, well, what is he doing? He's sort of staying away from the situation because, of course, what he just had to endure.
Yep. Reese?
Yeah, I mean, the system is designed to be punitive to anybody that gets in the way of whatever the system is trying to do. That includes cops. We've covered that many times on this show. And so that the thin blue line or whatever it's called, I don't know, the little flags they have with black and blue, whatever else, that shit don't count if you're not following the line. The thing that sucks the most is that it be your own people that set you up. Homegirl had a boyfriend that she had no business having, and then she roped him into it. He don't know what the hell's going on. And here he is 4 years later, now being acquitted, but still the damage has been done. As Lauren points out, the system is very, very punishing, innocent or not. That's something that we should change about the way that we do things, because it doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't lower crime, but it does serve the purpose of deterring people from getting in the way of what the system is trying to do.
Greg?
Absolutely. It's interesting, Marcus Harper's wife, Vanessa Harper, is a councilwoman, as we know, in Tulsa. And in the wake of the decision, she said that her husband was going back to work. And she also referred to crooked-ass cops in Tulsa. There's been a bullseye, no doubt, on that couple's back for quite some time. One of the things that Officer Harper didn't mention is that he was at one time, the way I understand it, president of the Black Officers Coalition there on the Tulsa Police Department. He chose a bench trial, so it was a judge, it wasn't a jury. I wonder if that was a legal strategy in order to avoid getting a jury in the box that might be sympathetic to the patrollers and try to crucify him. But the judge did say this in today's ruling. He said that while there was no evidence, as we heard, he said that perhaps he didn't condone the behavior. Here we go with you you're extemporizing, Judge Clifford Smith. But he said, I don't condone his behavior, and there may be grounds for discipline or termination from the TPD, which is why he almost has to go back to work, because apparently they've opened an internal investigation at the Tulsa Police Department. And all these years, and now you have an active internal investigation. He has to go back to work so that if they're going to jam him up and fire him, perhaps he can file a civil suit and recoup some of this money. But indeed, this is, as we've just heard, this is long-term intensive warfare. I don't know what kind of police officer that Marcus Harper was, I hope you know that he wasn't the type of person that would be in league with the paddle He doesn't seem to be.
No, not the case.
No, I wouldn't think so. But I mean, as I said, between him, his wife there in the city of Tulsa, which we know is one of the oases of racial justice in this country, they are engaged in long-term warfare. And hopefully he will go back. So if they're going to try to jam him up, he could take them back to court. And since he's been acquitted everywhere else, perhaps he can get some of this money back from the police department.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. We're going to talk about education report that impacts our children. Also, Donald Trump craps all over Milwaukee, where Republicans will hold a national convention. Milwaukee's black mayor responds. We'll show you that. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment.
Next on the Black Table, a man Cornel West calls the greatest Democratic theorist of his generation. Adolph Reed joins us to talk about his eventful life and his book, The South, Jim Crow and its Afterlives.
Somewhere between an electoral sweep or an out-and-out coup or putsch, I think the danger is quite real.
Join us for the Black Table, only on the Black Star Network.
Now streaming on the Black Star Network.
We look at all of the best mans, the movies, and then, of course, series on Peacock. Why do you think it resonated so well?
Well, I think it's a reflection of us. You know, I think it's a reflection of authentic black people, the way they see themselves. And in some instances, aspirationally so.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
The home life of a child has a direct impact on their school performance. The latest Kids Count data book from the Annie E. Casey Foundation found that persistent poverty undermines a child's chance of success at school. These children are not being prepared for the workforce and could end up costing the economy trillions. Leslie Bossier, the Vice President of External Affairs at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, joins us. Leslie, glad to have you here. And so, first of all, in this report, how many kids did you look at? How did you put this report together to reach this assessment?
Well, thank you for having me, Roland. The Kids Count data book is in its 35th year of publication, and we look at children across the United States. There are roughly 72 million children in this country, and we look at national and state-level data, and we rank states based on 16 indicators of child well-being, and both at the national level overall, as well as for each one of those indicators. And we have found some very disturbing news this year as it relates to education.
And so, how do you frame, what do you say is disturbing?
Well, of the 4 education-related indicators, we've seen declines in 3, and the 3 are very concerning. We've seen a reduction in the number of 3- and 4-year-olds who are enrolled in preschool. We know that those early learning years are incredibly important to how a child is going to progress in school. And more concerning, we've seen that only 32% of 4th graders are proficient in reading, and that's a slight decline from pre-pandemic year, 2018-2019 school year. And for math, we're seeing that only 1 in 4, 26% of 8th graders are proficient in mathematics. And that's a significant decrease from pre-pandemics, where we were at a rate of 33% of kids who are proficient in math. These are early warning indicators that we're not preparing young people with the skills that they need, the mathematics skills, the early reading skills that allow them to provide for themselves, to be competitive in the labor market. And we know, as you mentioned, Roland, that a skilled labor force is what propels our economy.
Questions from the panel. Greg, you're first.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Ms. Bossier, for the report. I was beginning to read the report, and looking at the racial disparities, they're quite striking. But, it was very interesting. And of course, as you're saying, the years of the pandemic certainly have had an impact. We would all think that, at least, if we couldn't back it up with the type of research that Casey has been doing. But I read an article in this morning's New York Times about the impact of social media. In fact, there's a term apparently that's being discussed among some psychologists and educational psychologists called brain rot. And they're concerned about the amount of time that young people in particular are spending on social media and how it is literally changing the way they read, the way they write. It's giving, and that's one of the words that they kept coming back to, it's giving brain rot. I wonder if your report has any factors in the impact of social media and the shifting technology on literacy and on education in general.
Well, we know that social media and technology has some very, very positive effects on young people, and also, as you mentioned, some negative effects. There are a number of things that we found in the report that have a direct impact that the schools do have some control over. For example, chronic absence is higher than it was. It's 30% of kids, 15 million children are chronically absent. They miss more than 10% of the school year. That's compared to 16% before the pandemic. So there's clearly a lot that's happening because kids can't learn if they're not showing up in the classroom. We also found that there's an increase in traumatic experiences by kids. It's affecting their mental health, and it's affecting their willingness to go to school. So there are a number of things that we've researched that are at play or behind the drops in academic performance for students.
Thank you.
Reese?
Thank you for being here. My question is about the increase in the child and teen death rate, mortality rate. What is behind that increase that you're seeing?
Well, we know that last year, the U.S. Surgeon General declared a mental health crisis, particularly for young people. We're seeing suicide rates that are higher than we've seen in many, many years. And that's particularly true for Black kids and particularly for young Black men, as well as for young girls. The anxiety, the incidents in which young people are saying they experience anxiety on almost a daily basis is increasing. We didn't grow up in a time when there were active shooter drills in schools. I didn't grow up when there were active shooters in schools right there. And so the young people, the children, are in a very, very different environment. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And all of that is affecting their overall well-being. And consequently, mental health conditions have worsened. Suicide or attempted suicides are higher than they've ever been before, than they have been in quite a long time.
Lauren?
So, Leslie, if you could change one thing about how kids are learning or not, what would that be? If you could wave a magic wand and change something, what would be your number one change?
It's a complex issue. And one of the things the report talks about is how interrelated everything is. Kids who are poor, who lack transportation, kids who can't safely get to school, kids who are hungry are less likely to go to school and therefore to be absent, and therefore their academic performance suffers. We know that during the time of the pandemic, academic success worsened, right? So I guess if I had a magic wand, given where we are today, I would say let's invest in the things that we know work. We know that high-dose intensive tutoring in person actually makes a difference. And we've seen 16 states that have used federal funds to invest in tutoring. So we know that our kids have fallen behind as a result of the pandemic. Let's invest in those things that work.
All right, then. Leslie, where can people go to read the report?
At the Annie Casey Foundation website, which is www.aecf.org.
All right, then. Well, we surely appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Roland.
All right. We come back. We're going to talk about the DOJ showing significant problems in the Phoenix Police Department. Also, Donald Trump, not a fan of Milwaukee. Black folks, let's give him another L in November. I'll tell you what he had to say. Next, on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the Black Star Network. Support us in what we do. Join the Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars will make it possible for us to travel around the country reporting the stories, for us to be able to not only with this show, but also the other shows on the Black Star Network. Our goal is to raise $1 million a year through our fan base, folks. That's 20. So you just do the numbers. 20,000 of our fans giving on average $50 each. It's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day, and that allows for us to be able to pay for all of this. You know, our monthly expenses, folks, are $195,000. That's staff. That's of course the rent. That's insurance. Everything that goes with associated with putting on doing this network. You know, we're fighting for dollars from the ad agencies, Group M, Dentsu, all of these different folks. You know, we're looking for those dollars. It's not easy. They don't really support black-owned media, and so your support matters. So send your check, money order and check to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairers of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the fourth leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP. Get others to come. Get a bus. Get a van. Get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Latasha from the A.
And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
A DOJ investigation revealed that the Phoenix Police Department has engaged in a pattern of practice of conduct that deprives people of their rights under the Constitution and federal law. The probe found systemic problems in the department's policies, training, supervision, and accountability systems that have been perpetuated for years. Here's Assistant Attorney General, the DOJ for Civil Rights Division, Kristen Clark, explaining the violations.
Based on a comprehensive review, we find that there is reasonable cause to believe that the police department and the city engage in a pattern or practice of conduct that violates the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. We have also identified violations of the Safe Streets Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Specifically, we found that the Phoenix Police Department and the City of Phoenix engage in a pattern or practice of using excessive force, unlawfully detaining, ticketing, and arresting homeless people, discriminating against Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous people in its policing enforcement, violating the rights of people engaged in demonstrations and protests, and discriminating against people with behavioral health disabilities. First, we found that the Phoenix Police Department uses excessive force, often unreasonably escalating the level of force within the very first few minutes or even seconds of an encounter. This behavior includes improper use of tasers, projectiles, leg restraints, police dogs, and even deadly force, including guns and neck restraints and compression restraints. Officers also routinely delay medical aid. Second, we found that unhoused people in Phoenix have suffered a pattern of unconstitutional conduct. This finding is historic. This marks the first time that the Justice Department has found violations of the civil and constitutional rights of people who are homeless. Third, our investigation found that the police department discriminates against Black, Hispanic, and Native American people in its enforcement activities. Police officers have an obligation to enforce the law fairly and equally, but in Phoenix, officers are disproportionately targeting communities of color. Fifth, we found that the police department and the city discriminate against people with behavioral health disabilities, particularly when responding to calls for assistance. For example, 911 call takers too often fail to identify when callers have behavioral health issues and default to sending most of those calls to police officers. Finally, we found that the police department makes no concession for the particular vulnerabilities of children, instead treating them just the same as adults. The problematic tactics and unlawful conduct of Phoenix police can significantly harm children's physical and mental well-being. Not only does such conduct harm children, but it can contribute to fear and distrust of law enforcement by the next generation.
I'm going to say it over and over and over again, Reese. Trump wins in November, you are not going to see a DOJ during investigations like that.
Hell no, they're going to be too busy trying to prosecute people like Marilyn Mosby and Andrew Gillum and every other Black person they could round up and try to persecute. They had no interest whatsoever in these pattern and practices investigations. They had no interest whatsoever in enforcing consent decrees. Matter of fact, the convicted felon Donald Trump is running on giving police officers immunity to do whatever the hell that they want to do to people that they are encountering. We see Republican governors across the country who are putting in laws under the pretext of stopping immigration that give cops, again, immunity to stop people, arrest them, and do whatever they want to do with them under the guise of suspecting that they might be illegal immigrants to this country. And so anybody who thinks that enough hasn't been done on criminal justice reform, which is true, but it's also true because of the composition of Congress, is on crack if they think that things are going to get any better under Trump 2.0.
And again, when we look at the differences between the two, there are people out there, Lauren, who say, hey, we didn't get criminal justice reform because the George Floyd Justice Act passed the House but not passed the Senate. But what you do have, though, is a very active Department of Justice Civil Rights Division that has been holding people accountable. And still, for the life of me, I don't understand why this administration does not champion what they're doing more. It's dumb to me.
Yeah, we also see a serious decrease in violent crime as well, which for some reason the administration doesn't seem to be wanting to talk about as well. I think that, the Democrats, of course, are always wrapped around the axle with regard to the issue of policing and crime. They never want to be caught in that communications vortex of being called too soft on crime. It doesn't matter what the stats are for whatever reason. They just don't want to go there. And they want to play sort of this moderate position when it comes to policing and law enforcement, and always wanting to, tiptoe around, if mentioned at all, the race issue. They never want to mention the race issue. The only people in the Democratic Party that mention the race issue are usually Black Democrats that will bring it up. And when they bring it up, they're told to shut up by white Democrats. So that cycle just sort of goes on and on forever. And Joe Biden in particular has been, in his career, he has been a supporter of punitive justice reform policy. And that history is problematic because, of course, he was one of the authors of the Clinton crime bill of 1994. And so, you know, his administration, you would think he would be highlighting, as you just said, Roland, you would think he would be highlighting some of these things, particularly as we go into an election. And it worked for him. The coalition that he built 4 years ago to win over Donald Trump, leaning into issues like this, worked for him, which is another reason why I can't figure out why they're not doing it. But for some reason, in this cycle, they are not doing it. And it could be a very consequential mistake.
Greg?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at Project 2025, somewhere around the 560s in terms of page numbers, they go into an extensive conversation about how they're going to, quote unquote, reform the Department of Justice. You can bet in fact, you don't even have to speculate. Just read what was written in Project 2025, consistent with what we're all saying here about a second Trump administration. There's not going to be an Office of Civil Rights. They won't be. We saw what they did under the littlest rebel Jeff Sessions in the first Trump administration when it comes to consent decrees. It's very interesting in this Phoenix situation, fifth largest city in the country. We heard there Attorney General Clark talk about the disparities. A third of the misdemeanor arrests that they made and citations that they issued, over a third, were to the unhoused. Isn't it striking how the first story you led with tonight, Roland, ties back around to where we're dealing with again, which is protecting the least of these. And finally, when we start talking about the statistics, a group in Phoenix, POTR, which advocates for non-white folk who find themselves confronted with police action, said we didn't need a report to tell us what we have known all along. Of course, the next question will be, will there be action toward a consent decree? Will there be an attempt to go into the courts? Maybe there'll be several dozen more judges confirmed by the end of this year, which is one of the reasons why perhaps Sheldon Whitehouse and Dick Durbin didn't push so hard about this SCOTUS ethics legislation they were trying to get forward. They want to get these judges confirmed, but you can bet your bottom dollar Trump gets back in again. All of these avenues toward using the law as a tool to try to get some equity, they're going to be shut off.
You mentioned Project 2025, and so they have this initiative to combat anti-white racism. This brings up what happened in Texas. So check this out. This group called True Texas Project are going to have this conference, but now all of a sudden speakers are pulling out, so is the venue, because they are white nationalists. And so they also have to be very close to Senator Ted Cruz. And so they believe in a war on white America. They also espouse Christian nationalism as well as the Great Replacement theory. And so this is the Republican Party. One of the speakers, Paul Gottfried, is a far-right author who mentored neo-Nazi and white supremacist Richard Spencer. And so these are the folks who were invited. And so people need to understand this is the Republican Party. Okay, so they might be saying, oh, I can't show up at the conference there, but trust me, that's who they are. You see right here, it says True Texas Project is a key part of a powerful political network that West Texas oil tycoons Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilkes have used to push the state GOP and legislature to adopt their hardline opposition to immigration, LGBTQ rights, and public education. These billionaires, they are, as you see this right here, it says they are the biggest donors to the Republican Party of Texas and have used their influence to purge the party of more moderate lawmakers and survive a high-profile scandal last year over racists and anti-Semites employed by groups they fund. These folks here are virulent racists. That's who they are, and they are supported by the Republican Party. I ain't fooled by this at all. And so, all y'all people who talking about sitting your ass on the couch, let me be real clear. They have no problem saying if we win, there will be racists employed in the federal government to root out, and they already attack, you keep seeing them attack, wokeness in the military, wokeness in everything. Anything dealing with equity is gone if Trump wins. So, go right ahead and sit your ass on the couch. But I'm telling you right now, come January and the inauguration, y'all gonna be saying, well, damn, why didn't we know? And we gonna tell you, hashtag, we tried to tell your simple Simon ass. I'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, Dexter Jenkins is a faith-based financial mentor with more than 20 years in the financial services industry. He's passionate about helping families build generational wealth.
Even though I'm talking about things like prayer, I'm talking about things about reading the word, I'm talking about things like fellowship, I'm talking to members who are dealing with losing their houses, or I'm talking to members who, because of a lack of the handling their finances, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so what I'm finding is that they're not coming to church because they don't have a handle on their finances.
We're talking how to get wealthy through faith and our finances on the next Get Wealthy right here, only on Black Star Network.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Bruce Smith, creator and executive producer of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Corey Smith has been missing from his Flourtown, Pennsylvania home since March 10th. The 15-year-old is 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighs 130 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Corey should call the Springfield Township, Pennsylvania Police Department at 215-836-1601, 215-836-1601. Supreme Court rejected the lawsuit challenging the FDA's approach to regulating the abortion pill. That means patients will continue to have access to the pills without an in-person doctor visit. The ruling is a significant setback to the anti-abortion movement. This was the first major Supreme Court case on reproductive rights since the court's conservative majority overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022. Vice President Kamala Harris weighed in on this.
This is not a cause for celebration, because the reality is certain things are still not going to change. We are looking at the fact that 2/3 of women of reproductive age in America live in a state with a Trump abortion ban. This ruling is not going to change that. This ruling is not going to change the fact that Trump's allies have a plan that, if all else fails, to eliminate medication abortion through executive action. So we must remain clear-eyed about the threats to reproductive freedom in America, and we must remain vigilant.
Politico had this report: the anti-abortion wins buried in the Supreme Court's unanimous ruling against them. They say that tucked in the pages of the unanimous ruling were potentially useful hints for abortion opponents, laying out a path to mount similar challenges to the medication in the future and limit abortion access in other ways. That's one of the things the court, these conservatives often do, Lauren, where in their statements they sort of signal to them, well, if y'all do this here, then we might consider this. That's how the right works.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that they're stuck on the abortion issue in terms of the polling would indicate that they have a massive problem coming up in this cycle, and we're about to find out how big of a problem they have after the overthrowing of the Dobbs decision and the, of course, overturning of Roe v. Wade. And some of the conservative Republicans have figured out a more nuanced position on certain things, and certainly in Virginia we've seen a little bit of that. But by and large, I think we're about to see the consequential thing that happens when you take a right away from someone, and folks are very aware of that. and also a lot of these older voters who show up to the polls and vote very consistently, who lived through that history in the late 60s and 1970s of the women's rights movement, et cetera, and so on, are going to remember that as well. So this is going to be a very consequential moment, and I don't know that the Republicans can message their way out of it.
But here's what they said, Greg. One, the decision didn't touch the merits. They ruled on procedural grounds. I said the doctors did not have standing because they were not directly impacted by the FDA policies. They also said in here that let your conscience be a guide. Both anti-abortion and abortion rights advocates zeroed in on what the ruling said about the right of doctors to refuse to perform abortions or other health services if they feel conflict with their moral or religious beliefs. So you have that. Also, they say that they provided in this concurrence by Clarence Thomas that contains suggestions for other ways abortion opponents could bring legal challenges or pursue restrictions on the pills in Congress or through the executive branch. And finally, they said Thomas's concurrence also included a flashing warning light for abortion rights proponents who've long relied on what's known as third-party standing to challenge abortion restrictions in court. Thomas wrote using loaded language favored by the anti-abortion movement that the court's decision denying standing to the doctors in the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine should cut both ways. Quote, just as abortionists lack standing to assert the rights of their clients, doctors who oppose abortion cannot vicariously assert the rights of their patients. Greg?
That is exactly right. Everyone, please. In fact, you ought to clip that, Roland, and put it on that short attention span loop, either YouTube Shorts or TikTok, for people to understand. This is, again, why these elections are so important. These are federal judges. That's exactly right. That was the court's ruling today when you read Beer Kavanaugh's writing for everyone, except Clarence Thomas, who, as you said, concurred. I'll come back to that in a second. Understand that this isn't even the end of this case. At the district court level in Texas, that Matthew Kaczmarek allowed Idaho, Missouri, and Kansas in as plaintiff interveners, which means this could come back to the court. So this doesn't mean that it's over. You heard the Vice President of the United States. So that's one thing out of three. Secondly, look at Kavanaugh's opinion. Kavanaugh writes that the plaintiffs may present their concerns and objections to the president and the FDA in the regulatory process. Understand, as you just heard Roland say, as you said, Roland, this case was dismissed on procedural grounds, lack of standing, and the second issue being pursued was whether or not the FDA regs, which allow which lift the requirement that you have to have an in-person visit to get the medicine, and also extend up to 10 weeks to be able to get the medicine. Those are FDA regs. So that means that they can either be implemented by the executive branch, or you can pull back on implementing them, pull back on enforcing them. A Trump administration is not only not going to enforce them, when you read Project 2025, go to page 458, where the people say they urge the government to reverse its approval of chemical abortion drugs because the politicized approval process was illegal from the start. That is the issue on substance that the court did not reach today. Finally, Clarence Thomas, as you say, Roland, in his concurrence, he's right down the line, but here's where the poison pill is. There's something in the law called associational standing, not to be confused with third-party standing or organizational standing. But what Clarence Thomas is saying is, that associational standing, that's kind of like third-party standing, and you shouldn't be able to intervene. Who should be scared about that? Advocacy groups. Meaning Clarence Thomas is like, let's think about the NAACP. Let's think about Emily's List. You can't intervene. Associational standing. These people have a laser-targeted agenda, and they are going to roll it out so quickly, as you say, Roland. Trump wins this second one, they're going to come back and say, and as you say, hashtag, you tried to tell them.
I keep telling these people they had better understand if they sit on their asses this fall in November. I'm telling you right now, Trump wins, Alito and Thomas are going to retire. They are going to appoint some late 30, early 40-year-old hard right wing, and that means for the next 2 generations, we will be guaranteed, and keep in mind, Sotomayor is getting up in age. Look, listen, John Roberts will be getting into the 70s. People need to understand they could lock in a hard right conservative Supreme Court for the next 30 to 40 years. The election in November is not about the next 4 years of Biden. It is not about Vice President Harris. It is literally about, will the conservatives, will the hard right Christian nationalist white supremacist Republicans, will they control the Supreme Court for the next 30 to 40 years?
That's incredible. Oh, I should mention this, Roland, just one other thing. In the report in Project 2025, they say abortion pills pose the single greatest threat to unborn children in a post-Roe world. They never wanted to return Roe versus Wade to the states. Their goal was always a theocratic ban on a woman's right to control her body. I am embarrassed to say that I did not know that close to 2/3 of all abortions in this country come as a result of taking the pills. I didn't know that. These people are playing for keeps, as you say, Ron. They're not trying to return anything to people's choice. They want to control women's bodies. They want a Christian theocracy. And now Alito can say it from the rooftops, blame it on his wife. And they, in this court ruling today, put what everyone should be terrified of in the very language that people are saying, oh, we celebrate. You better read what they wrote. They want a theocracy.
And, Reese, they want to get rid of birth control, too.
Absolutely. They want to get rid of birth control and the ability to reproduce through IVF. Listen, folks, the reality is that this election is not about personalities. It's not about the way that you want your package and if a president packaged in a younger body, maybe a more good-looking white man or whatever the hell the situation may be. This is about institutional power, multi-generational power. What the Supreme Court did today was not protect abortion access through the abortion pill. What they did was they bought themselves a little bit of time. They're willing to wait. It has been a 50-year fight to overturn Roe. They're willing to wait a couple more months to get through the election. And as you all said, as soon as they have the majority, the majority in the House, the majority in the Senate, and the executive branch, it's all bets are off. And so this is nothing more than stalling for time. They understand the politics of the environment and how detrimental this has been to the Republican Party's chances in November to take all, winner take all this time. And so they're willing to give people a temporary reprieve, let people sit back a little bit longer, go back to their complacency, and think that we're still in status quo. Status quo was out the door when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And so this is absolutely about autonomy. This is about the citizenship of women in this country. And when you're seeing what they're doing around abortion in Texas, surveilling women who leave the state, other Republican states, they want to surveil women. They want to surveil people who they believe or want to assert are helping women get abortions. This is a whole different ballgame. That's not a conspiracy. It's literally happening day in and day out. So I agree with Vice President Kamala Harris. This is not cause for celebration. It is cause to double down. Put your big girl panties on, your big boy drawers on, and stop with the bullshit about who's too old or whatever the fuck the situation may be, and recognize that we are in a fight to save our citizenship or lose it.
All right, folks. The first ever equity march will take place on Saturday right outside of our studios on Black Lives Matter Plaza. Black racial equity organizations are calling for a meeting with President Joe Biden ahead of the 2024 election to discuss racial equity and reparative justice legislation. UCLA professor of sociology and African American studies, Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter, is one of the organizers and the executive director of United by Equity. He is also the author of Radical Reparations, Healing the Soul of a Nation. He joins us now. So first of all, when you talk about equity, okay, so for the march you're having, what does that mean? What specifically are you asking for?
Yeah, first, shout out to you for holding it down for the culture and for Black people. Thank you for having me here. I also just want to say I saw you at Tulsa at the Legacy Fest. A shout out to Dr. Tiffany Crutcher. You held it down there as well, so just want to acknowledge that.
Appreciate it.
On the point about equity, I think first we know a lot of our history, and for those of us who do know it, and the parts that aren't banned just yet, is that a lot of our history has been around the issue of equality. But if we get down to the root word, you cannot spell equality without the word equity. Equity actually just builds equity for all equals equality. And what we've been talking a lot about is the positive stories across the nation, cities, towns, states, regions, and suburbs where issues of reparative justice and truth and racial healing have been happening. But the question is why hasn't the Biden-Harris administration been highlighting it, especially given we hear so many negative stories? And also, why has Congresswoman Barbara Lee, the highest ranking Black woman in the U.S. Congress, not been given a meeting with the president all of these years to discuss a pathway forward about reparative justice? So we are marching to demonstrate that there's a public will and appetite in this nation for a positive movement forward. And there's a slate of legislation before the Congress now, from book banning to voting rights to equity for all. Shout out to the Poor People's Campaign, Third Reconstruction, which Rep. Lee also is the primary for. So there's a suite of progressive legislation that hasn't seen the light of day, nor has there been a successful meeting yet with the members to talk about ways to have these things happen.
Well, one of the reasons you haven't seen that become light of day because Republicans control the House.
I think that's one angle, but I would also say that's on the kind of legislative point. But the executive branch also has this this platform called the bully pulpit. We have not yet heard the name Breonna Taylor spoken from that platform just yet. We've listened to several State of the Unions where we know statistically, based on political science over many, many decades, that what is said at the State of the Union is not necessarily politically detrimental to outcomes or determinative of political outcomes. So the question becomes, why have we not heard her name? We know that if not for the loss of her life and Mr. Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and so many other people, that there would not have been 72+ million people voting for this administration. So why has that not been spoken?
Wait, 1 second. When you say it hasn't been spoken, what specifically do you mean? Go to my iPad. This was a tweet that was posted on March 13, 2021. Breonna Taylor's death was a tragedy, a blow to her family, her community, and America. As we continue to mourn her, we must press ahead to pass meaningful police reform in Congress and remain committed to signing a landmark reform bill into law. That was President Biden. So when you say it hasn't been spoken, what do you mean?
What I mean is using the bully pulpit more than just the tweet that you just shared when we were still in the Panini Panorama pandemic. I'm saying when there's a joint special session of Congress and you speak to members of that body and also including Supreme Court justices, we have not seen that come forward. And what I'm saying about that is not just about executive order, that's about executive action and also about encouraging the fourth state, the media, to do much of what you're doing, which is to cover stories like this. So that's part of what I'm getting at. We have not yet had a sustained media cycle about reparations, about reparative justice, or about equity. And even those of us who have been organizing around it, we've seen philanthropy dry up and move. You know, they're going somewhere else. And those $340 billion that McKinsey has counted that were public pledges around racial equity have not only not been spent, but that has been spent, it's been hidden. And many times it's just an internal expenditure. So what I'm saying is that, one, it's a positive story about places where Black people are not the dominant majority, where cities, towns, and states are doing reparative justice. And I think that the American people and the nation ought to be hearing about that, especially because we're inundated by so much war, so much division and polarization.
Reese?
First of all, go Bruins. So thank you for your work. I agree with you in terms of there is an opportunity there to use the bully pulpit more to draw attention to issues of racial equity. I believe that the administration has done a lot of actions around it. The messaging hasn't been that great, perhaps because they've released 100 actions that they've done at a time. Vice President Kamala Harris invoked Breonna Taylor at the executive order that President Biden signed in 2022 around policing reform. But to your point, it's not a message that people have connected the dots of what they're doing around a variety of racial equity causes. My question is, how do we put pressure on the administration? The Democrats, I always agree, can do more, but also draw attention to things like Project 2025 to the fact that convicted ex-president, impeached president Donald Trump is running on a platform of giving police officers immunity. How do we balance the fact that people need to understand what has been done, what needs to be done, but also the alternatives that we see in the opposition party?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you so much for what you do as well. I think one of the things that's worth thinking about is one, and this may be, I'll say hashtag unpopular opinion, is that a lot of times what's been happening politically is that Democrats have only had to be an alternative, not really an actor. And so part of what happens is if it's just always about not being Donald Trump, that doesn't get people out of bed. That is not enough to make people enthusiastic. I think the other thing that is worth thinking about and talking about, and we heard 50 Cent say a bit of this, is that now you have a convicted felon who has 4 baby moms. Shout out to Black neighborhoods and communities across the world. We understand that. We identify with that. So as much as people see that as like, oh, we shouldn't vote for that, that is not who we should have as president. A lot of our communities and many people, I see a lot of and spend a lot of time around regular, schmegular, degular Black folks. And I've heard them say more publicly now that they're voting for Trump than they did 4 years ago. It was more quiet and more surprising. Some people are saying it straight up. And I think it's about the idea that people just see, oh, don't vote for this alternative. And some people felt like, well, I lived through that 4 years. And I'm still here and I'm living in these 4 years and I'm not really telling a difference. It doesn't mean that there isn't a difference, but there is an optics that I think is creating an enthusiasm gap. And again, a lot of people are saying Genocide Joe around the issue of Palestine and a ceasefire. And my encouragement through open letters, organizing, protesting, demonstrating is to really push the administration and our federal government towards leaning into the positive story about reparative justice and racial equity and truth and racial healing that's happening across the country. The question is, why haven't we heard the president say, I am aware that the young Democrat governor, Gavin Newsom, has initiated and inaugurated the first in the nation process called reparations commissions. And California has not seceded from the union. It is actually a democratic process that we are monitoring and paying close attention to. I'm on my way there to attend one of the first in the nation commissions just to listen. Imagine a world we could live in when the media is responsible for following the president in that story.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Dr. Hunter. I'm glad you raised that first in the nation reparations, statewide reparations commission. I testified before the commission. I am very much on the record. I am vehement against lineage-based reparations. Anybody who studied the law, knows anything about the law, knows that the courts are going to use lineage as a proxy for race. It's not going to survive challenge. I'm wondering, and I'm looking forward to the New York Commission, which I think will be a little bit less ideologically kind of split over this. We'll see. My question to you is a reparations question. Certainly H.R. 40 has been stuck for all kind of reasons. The 2 years that John Conyers did not introduce it, ironically, or maybe not so ironically, were during the Obama presidency. What is your position, or what are your thoughts on the president, by executive order, establishing a commission? And if they were to do that, who should be on that commission, and what kind of reparations agenda might be put forward in what would essentially be the same kind of thing R40 would pursue, which is a study commission, but the president would appoint it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Also, thank you for standing in this area for so long, and it is a great honor to be in your presence. Shout out to you, Dr. Carr. You know, I got to say that. You already know. The answer for me, one is, and this is something I talk about in my book, Radical Reparations, is that there are 7 forms of repair, only one of which is a check. There are piles and piles of debt, injury, and trauma: political reparations, intellectual reparations, legal reparations, economic reparations, spiritual, spatial, and social reparations. And so something that we can think a lot about, for example, when it's not cash in hand, what if Black people woke up tomorrow with an 800 plus credit score? Right? I always think about good times when the dad, James Evans, wanted to buy a nice coat for Florida for just being an awesome Black woman mother that she was. And he goes down to the department stores. At the time, it was Sears and Roebuck, I believe, as portrayed on the show. And he comes home disappointed because he's like, yeah, I went down there and I thought I would be able to put it on layaway. And they said, no, I got to apply for this thing called credit. And guess what? It didn't go through. Now I couldn't buy anything. So just also thinking about these digital systems that exist that keep us out, that block Black entrepreneurial endeavors, that could easily overnight be changed and there would be no money in hand. The other thing that I would also say is that when we think about an expanded version of reparations, and we start getting into this, which is the purpose of a reparations commission, is to discover how each state, each town, each committee, each city, each community needs different things, because we all have different relational fields to the origin story of the enslavement of Black Africans in America. That said, some of it is about education, public awareness, beating back the steady diet of misinformation and confusion. And I ultimately think that reparations is a global invitation to build a more beautiful world. It is not something to be afraid of. It is something that we can lean into and not wait for the coronavirus to kill people to say, you know what? Slavery is a pre-existing condition of the United States. If we don't attend to that pre-existing condition, every other disease, dis-ease, war, conflict is going to get us even deeper, because we're already handicapped by our past that has not been restored, reconciled, or repaired. So I think about it as a positive move forward, and to not be afraid to move forward and lean in as an invitation to include a world that is more beautiful.
Lauren?
Yeah, so Dr. Hunter, have you ever worked in the government?
I've been a public school teacher for about 20 years. So
okay, yes,
technically,
yes,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir, I hear you. So I've worked in the federal government and state government in 2 states. And what I find, generally speaking, is the way that something gets done, really a lot of times without a lot of fanfare. So the part where you were saying, the president hasn't mentioned Breonna Taylor, it sounds good to me when I listen to it. And then I think about history and I say to myself, well, LBJ wasn't exactly out there running his mouth all the time about some of the things that happened in terms of his presidency, which he was actually known for using the N-word and throwing stuff out like that. And then the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act passed, and I think certainly we are into a theatrical style of politics. I mean, when you say that your friends, you're hearing people say that they're going to vote for Trump. I hear the same thing. And when somebody does that, I turn to them and say, why? Why exactly are you voting for Trump? I get that sort of spirit of, well, it can't just be saying all the time, one guy is bad, so you're going to vote for Joe Biden. At the same time, from a substantive standpoint here, whether we're talking about Israel, which, by the way, the two of them effectively have identical views on it, not completely identical, but I actually think Trump would put his foot on the gas even more with regard to what we're seeing in Israel. But at any rate, things get done not because people are tweeting or because people are using the bully pulpit. Things get done because somebody's standing in a back room in some office in some place nobody's ever heard of, changing the language in a bill. And then everybody, when it gets passed, finds out sometimes a little bit later. What do you think of the more substantive side of politics? I mean, because a lot of what you're talking about sounds a little bit theatrical to me. Though exciting, I love theatrics. It's exciting, but does it actually get something done?
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I will say that, especially around issues of reparations, and this is back to Dr. Carr's question that I want to connect, is that what we know that's important is that enslavement was authorized through narrative. And it's something to be said for there being narrative work happening, that we create and spread narratives that are positive and affirming. And that might not always wind up in a bill, but that is really, really, really important. the story that we tell each other about one another is super important. At the same time, I drafted and worked with Congresswoman Barbara Lee to write the first ever bill for a U.S. Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission. And I've been in these work groups. I was in Zoom University for the last 3+ years, meeting with people to try to get co-sponsorship and going to staff and, meeting with both sides of the aisle and see who will sign on. And I am painfully aware of the process and the labor and the lack of fanfare that happens around bills. But I also think that we have to be in a both and case because we live simultaneously. We live as policies and legislation are happening and as stories are being told about us, divorced from policy. And so really it's about how do we meet both of those challenges that face communities all the time. And I think that's why I keep emphasizing the social repair aspect. Before enslaved Black people arrived somewhere. So we know, for example, Virginia is one of the first places people came and that they were auctioning children. Folks have to ask themselves, if you were in the marketplace, let's just say you go to the Ralphs or the Vons or whatever your neighborhood market is or your supermarket chain is, and you're in the Trader Joe's and you're squeezing your avocado to see if it's ripe or underripe, and you look to the right and somebody's selling babies or young girls or children in that same marketplace. What would be your reaction? And many people will go, I would be, completely abhorred, and I would immediately stop shopping and do something about that. But that is not what happened when we're talking about slavery. And it's because there was an infrastructure of narratives that preceded Black people arriving so that our dehumanization had already been internalized, not always through policy, because there weren't always laws or policies guiding this practice. It was about people's belief systems and a steady diet of inferiority that they were sent about what Black people were or are. And so when we're thinking about issues of equity or issues of reparations or repair or any of those things, it's a both and problem and a both and creative challenge.
All right, what time is the march?
Yes, we will begin marching at 3:30 from McPherson Square. We will complete our march at next to the Wilson Building, the seat of DC Power at 1350 Pennsylvania Avenue. Everyone's invited, and at 11 a.m. we'll be doing a gratitude ceremony, sending the ancestors up alongside African drummers, proceeding in a lap around a reflecting pool where so many of our elders and our survivors and our descendants and our ascendants have gone to try to make this nation a better place and to ensure that all people are free here.
All right. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You already know.
All right, folks, we come back, we'll chat. We have our Tech Talk segment, and we'll also remember 2 prominent African Americans who are now ancestors. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Farquhar, executive producer of Proud Family. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. I had a couple of conversations today with some folks, and we were talking about, again, content creation, and monetization. So what we're seeing is a lot of people out here who are enamored with likes, enamored with, people commenting about their posts. But the question always comes back to, but are you making any money doing it? And so You have folks who say, hey, I want to be influencers. Well, what the hell does that even mean? How do you actually do that? And what we're also seeing is the folks who are running these platforms, how they are making decisions that you have no control. If they change the algorithm, the business that you have can completely go kaput. And we've actually seen that happen. Isaac Hayes III is the founder of Fanbase. Isaac, I'm thinking back to, glad to have you here. I'm thinking back to, that was a gentleman, and I read this story about 4 or 5 years ago, and they were on Facebook, and they were doing great. They were buying lots of advertising, and then all of a sudden, that thing began to shift, and basically they went out of business. And he was crushed by it because they were feeding into that system. I talked to another brother who called me up and was like, man, I think I'm just gonna stop doing this content stuff because I just can't make any money on YouTube. And because he was complaining that they changed the algorithm. And what I'm constantly trying to remind people about is that the platforms aren't concerned about you and your business. You are their business. You are driving the money for them. And a lot of folks keep getting confused by that. And they think that, that they're supposed to be doing content creators favors. No, it's about them making money, not you.
100%. I agree. I always say if the platform isn't paying you directly, then you are the product. And I think that's important for every single person that uses social media. They got to understand that. You know, for the past 2 days, I'm here to have an impassioned conversation right now, Roland, because something that I've been hearing a lot over the last couple of days is about reparations and equality and equity and all these things that we're talking about, even in the space of social media and content creation. But one of the things that I really want to introduce to the viewers tonight is the fact of ownership and what we've been able to do at Fanbase, because I know Fanbase is a social media tech startup. Well, what makes Fanbase unique is that it has been funded by the people. We have raised over $10 million from 15,000 investors around the planet that actually own equity in Fanbase. And really what I want to say about that is the fastest way to build wealth in this country is through technology. When I see Facebook as a $1.2 trillion, $1.3 trillion market cap, or ByteDance that's worth, $300 billion, but all these platforms have been built off the culture and content of Black people. So if we're not building infrastructure, we're not building infrastructures in tech where we own those and then we're able to invest in them and then scale those businesses up to multi-billion-dollar businesses, then exit those businesses and then do it again with other platforms and other startups and other companies, we will always be asking for permission to try to build wealth in this country in a way I think we should continue to do, but absolutely take advantage of the opportunity to invest in tech companies and startups through equity crowdfunding. So that's what we've been able to do. That's what I'm doing on Start Engine. If you have not heard of Fanbase, go to startengine.com/Fanbase. You can invest and actually have ownership and equity in a platform that has almost 700,000 users, is a global platform, over in 190 countries and territories worldwide. And I just launched a raise that we're raising $17 million. And we're already at $1.3 million. My goal is to get to $2 million in the next couple of weeks. I tell people that the minimum to invest in Fanbase is $399. You can literally buy shares of stock and have stock in a company, in a tech startup that is continuing to grow and build. And I think, I hear these conversations all the time that we have about Black wealth, but I'm like, guys, we got to start owning the Ubers, the Facebooks, the Apples, Googles.
But I think what this requires, it actually requires a completely change of focus. What it requires folks not to be caught up in white validation. To understand. I mean, look, I've had some folks sit here and I was having a conversation. I was thinking back to when I was running the Dallas Weekly. And I was telling folks, look, I had a great time running it. When I joined CNN, I didn't leave TV1. I didn't leave WVON radio because I was on CNN. For me, it wasn't the be-all to end-all. That was this idiot at Fox News who was tweeting me. He was like, "Oh, your career has just gone in the pits. You can't work at any network." And I'm like, I'm actually making more money today than I did when I was there, and I'm having more fun. And so a lot of this has to do with African Americans reaching a point where we're not caught up in this validation. I remember talking to a young sister who wanted to do a book, and I was actually encouraging her to go ahead and self-publish for the purpose of having more ownership and freedom when it comes to her book. And after about 40 minutes, I said, okay, can we just cut to the chase? You are desperate to get a book deal because you want to be able to tell somebody, I have a book with HarperCollins. I have a book with St. Martin's Press. And she was like, you're right. I said, so you need I said, you do know that when you get an ISBN number and you publish your book and you sell your book, you're an author. But she felt she wasn't a legitimate author unless she signed with one of those companies. This to me is, I think, part of the issue. For a lot of folk, they are caught up in the validation. Oh, no, that's real and this really isn't. And that's what's stopping, I think, a lot of folks from really thinking more like an entrepreneur, more like an owner, because they're caught up in, oh no, but if I'm doing it for them, it's deemed to be more real.
Well, I think also, I believe that's an issue, but I also believe that there's a lack of information that people don't understand, even equity crowdfunding. So equity crowdfunding really got started in 2015 when people were able to raise capital for their businesses from the general public. So people that are watching this program right now can invest in companies before they go public. So it's like investing in NVIDIA before NVIDIA is the company that it is now, or Apple or Facebook. And people don't know that that started in 2015, and it really didn't pick up till after the pandemic. So when we started raising capital, so people don't even know that you can actually invest in companies and have equity and ownership. And so I was at RenderFest down here in Atlanta, Georgia today. It's a tech festival. It's Atlanta Tech Week. And it's so many people that didn't even know that you could actually invest in tech companies that way and want to invest in fan base for not crazy amounts of money. Before you used to do this, before equity crowdfunding, you have to put $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 into a pool of people to invest in an early stage company. And those people are typically rich people, accredited investors. I'm saying now that we have to start to get the message out that people can fund their businesses through equity crowdfunding using things like the Jobs Act, again, which Obama and Biden signed into law, and fund this. I'm the first black man to ever raise $10 million in Reg CF equity crowdfunding. So we're making history. That's the thing about it. It's like people don't understand that information. So more investors we have, but think about that. 15,000 people have invested in Fanbase, and we've raised $11 million in 3 years. And I'm raising $17 million right now. And everybody that's watching this program can invest in Fanbase today, like can put $3.99, $5.99 in the platform, have equity, and then utilize your own network to tell people to download the app, use the app, continue to grow our user base, and then make the app more valuable. And then we raise more capital and we scale this to a $100 billion business or a $10 billion business, whatever it is. But then we exit and then we do it again. And so I think the validation is there, but a lot of people have never seen a black founded social media platform that's for every single person on the planet. Most of the black founded apps that people see are just exclusively for black people. And I don't have a problem with that at all. But I feel like if we're going to scale businesses to the value of a TikTok or a value of an Instagram, we need to include the world. We need to include Africa. We need to include Australia. We need to include China. We need to include all these other countries that utilize Fanbase, India, all these platforms that are using Fanbase to continue to scale their business. So Fanbase is the only black-owned social media platform that exists right now that's for every single person on the planet. But the thing that makes it the most important is that it's founded and black run. So I'm not here to exploit my culture and my community. I'm here to empower the community to say, look, this is who's at the top. So when you're creating your culture, when you're doing your music and your fashion, I'm not here to exploit that to the benefit of a small group of investors that are going to make tons and tons of money when this thing scales. I'm here to allow our culture to shine, and the benefit of those people that actually see those dollars are us, because we're owners in the creations that we do. So as much as I think that there's absolutely a white validation, there's also a lack of understanding that we've never seen this before. There's never been a platform like Fanbase. There has absolutely never been a Black-founded social media app that was founded for the entire world to use. But we know the value of Black culture, and we use that culture to continue to empower. We do it with record labels. All these record labels are most valuable. What Drake and Kendrick Lamar did for the record industry is incredible, but they don't own any of the labels that they're doing this stuff on, right? It's the same thing. Conversations happen on TikTok. What Kai Cenat is doing for Twitch right now, he just did the largest live stream on Twitch with Kevin Hart and Drewski, and they got 700 and some thousand concurrent viewers, and over 21 million people saw that stream. But Kai Cenat doesn't own Twitch.
Got it.
Saying we have streaming on Fanbase. You can own Fanbase. We're building RTMP streaming for gamers right now. So you can own Fanbase and start to stream on Fanbase and have equity, and you make money because the platform is monetized that way.
Reese?
I'm glad you brought up what Kai Cenat just did. Is there a recruitment strategy? I'm curious to see if, content creators and other Black influencers are kind of looking for sponsorship or some sort of, paid partnerships for your organization or for your company, as opposed to how they give things away for free, to your point. I mean, they do get, sometimes there is compensation on the back end. But I'm just curious what kind of conversations you've had and willingness you've seen from kind of the more big draw names in terms of joining your platform.
So the conversation that we have in our community usually is a money conversation. I'm going to be totally transparent. When we're talking in our community, we want the cash up front. Now, I can tell you a few names and go Google them. Aiden Ross, he has equity in Kick. Charlie D'Amelio has equity in Step, which is like a little debit card for teenagers to use. She has equity in the company. Google Bryce Hall. He has equity in companies, right? All these startups. These younger white creators are choosing to have equity in these startups because they know that they can leverage their reach to drive people to the business, to scale it up, and then exit the company. So my conversation with Kai Cenat would be equity. Kai Cenat's making like $800,000 a month. He don't need any, he can make more money, but I'm trying to make Kai Cenat a billionaire. I say, Kai, come over here and get equity. If Kai Cenat came to Fanbase would probably go from 700,000 users to 2.7 million users in probably 30 days. And it would literally be $1 billion company just because of one kid brought all his platform there and said, come over here and I'm going to do audio rooms and play video games and stuff like that. But at the same time, he owns part of the platform. He's an owner. He doesn't own equity in Kick. DJ Academics is on Rumble. He does not own equity in Rumble. So if you research right now, research all the white creators that have equity in these companies. Do you see what Ryan Reynolds did with Mint Mobile? He put his own capital in it, but he scaled that thing up. They sold that thing for $1 billion, I think. He got $300 million out of that thing. So these creators need to start leveraging their reach and their brand equity in these companies and then scale them up and then exit. That's where the real money is going to come from. They're going to be rich. All these creators are going to be rich. But if you want to reach billions, I think Kai Cenat can be a billionaire having equity in Fanbase. I think all these creators, musicians, artists should have equity in these social media platforms instead of being on them and then making them valuable, and you don't have any of the bottom line that you own.
Lauren?
So back to what Roland was saying about content, Isaac. When I go onto a platform, whether it was back in the day when Facebook started or Twitter or whatever the heck it was because there was something in that content that I had to go and find out about or read about, or somebody sent me the link and I had to go. I was compelled because there was some content-related reason. And as you can see, as I don't need to tell you with regard to Kai Cenat and Mr. Beast and these people, yeah, their content is interesting. And yes, it's a lot of traffic, making a lot of money. I think making money is extremely important. I have no problem focusing on that. But this content is extremely vacuous. So is the strategy to put up whatever it takes to get people's attention to make that money? And by the way, I don't think there's anything terribly wrong with that strategy. I mean, if that's the strategy, fine, it's the strategy. But a lot of this stuff is meaningless. And now I know I'm an egghead pointy-head person who likes to talk about politics all day. I know that's not a big draw category, never has been. It's usually celebrity sports. I mean, you know what the categories are better than I do, Isaac. But I'm just saying, are you trying to get a Kai Cenat on there or whoever it takes to get that content going, to make that money, and then build to something else? Again, if that's the play, it's all good, but I'm just wondering.
No, I built it for everybody to actually be on the platform. To be honest, politics is probably one of the most engaging forms of content on social media because it creates conflict. It creates people going back and forth in the comments and on Twitter and all these other places. So no, if you talk about politics is some of the most engaging content that you will get. If you bring up Trump and stuff like that, you will have tons and tons of engagement. So it's not necessarily to do that. The reason why Kai Cenat is so important in this is that I believe that Facebook and Instagram are older platforms. They're the OGs in this social media game. Fanbase, newer platform. So to have a platform that can be around for the next 20 years, Fanbase 20 years from now will be the OG, but it's going to have young talent and young people on it to make it grow and thrive.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Brother Hayes. I'm sitting here taking notes, as I always do when you and Roland have conversation. As an educator, in one of the earlier segments, we were talking with some folks who were talking about literacy and numeracy among our young people, and it's like I was mentioning, an article was in today's New York Times around the concept of brain rot because of TikTok, and the kids and the language is being shaped. And I'm reading Kyle Chaka's recent book, Filter Word, about algorithms. And when Lauren asked you this question, it really kind of sparked the question that I have for you. How do educators use a platform like Fanbase to, I mean, here at Black Star, this is informational, we're moving forward. And yeah, politics does create conflict, but often I guess I wouldn't distinguish perhaps between the arguments about Trump and Biden on a lot of these platforms, and I would between Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, or for that matter, Drake versus Kendrick. Conflict driving it, the algorithms driving. How can educators punch through that, or is it even possible in your mind to kind of elevate the conversation and get at what is going to be with us from now on, which is these platforms and these algorithms?
Well, I believe there's 4 pillars of engagement, and one of them is actually information. So the 4 pillars of engagement are attention, information, entertainment, and conflict. So if you get all 4 of those, you have something incredibly, massively engaging, right, for people. But people want information. People are on the internet. People are using Google and ChatGPT and all these other platforms to find things out. I think the way that you disseminate information can also be done through a personality or a person. So the same information coming from you or coming from me might resonate with different people. So educators can educate in their voice, in their way, right? Especially on a platform like Fanbase, because we have multiple verticals, multiple content creation mediums where people can use. So we have stories, we have live, we have long form content up to 2 hours, like YouTube. So you can post a 2-hour video for free if you want to. We have audio rooms like Clubhouse. We didn't have audio rooms. Clubhouse didn't let the first 1 million people invest in Clubhouse. So I said we have audio rooms on Clubhouse that can hold hundreds and thousands of people to have audio conversations to educate. We have all kinds of tools for Fanbase. So I think that's the thing that's important, is that when you take the culture and the tech and put it together, you have a medium that can disseminate information to anybody on the planet all over the globe. But again, I think in the back of my mind, I'm always considering that who is the labor force behind social media? Who is the labor force that makes Twitch popular? Who's making Apple Music? Who's making Spotify popular? Hip hop is making those platforms popular. Who's making social media popular? Drewski and Funny Marco and all these other people. But ask those people, ask any of those individuals, do they actually own part of the company? So I say we start from scratch, the infrastructure, and then have equity in it and do that. But you can absolutely educate on Fanbase. It's a platform designed to act. And here's another reason why I think it's important that you can educate as well, because we don't suppress content. I'm not here to suppress content. I'm not here to stop you from seeing, your viewers from seeing you. But Instagram does that because they run ads. So they don't want you to reach 1 million people because they want you to pay to reach 1 million people. I want you to reach anybody that wants to reach you.
Yes.
All right, folks, more information, go to startengine.com/fanbase. Isaac, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Reese, Lauren, Greg, I certainly appreciate y'all joining us on today's show. Thank you so very much. I'm going to take a short break, and we have 2 memoriams that we have to do, folks, and we'll have that next. Back in a moment.
On a next, A Balanced Life, we talk about how to get in touch with your feelings, emotions, how to find your North Star, and how to move your life along.
Because oftentimes what we'll do is we'll accept what the world says about us as the truth and how we see ourselves, which that can be completely contrary to what the Word of God says about who you are.
That's on a next, A Balanced Life, here on Black Star Network.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Folks, Hall of Fame basketball coach Robert Hughes out of Fort Worth has died at the age of 96. Hughes, a former All-American at Texas Southern University in Houston, coached boys basketball at the all-black Terrell High School in Fort Worth, Texas, from 1958 to 1973, followed by coaching at Dunbar High School for 32 years, where he retired in 2005. Hughes' career record is 1,333 wins, which is tops in the country. He led his teams to 5 state championships and 35 district titles. He was named the National High School Coach of the Year in 2003, inducted into the National High School Hall of Fame and the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, and enshrined in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. Robert Hughes was a tough coach. When I worked at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, I covered a couple of those ceremonies when they were at City Hall for winning the state championship. He was a strong presence in the life of so many of those young men, beloved by many people in Fort Worth. And so many folks are saddened of his passing. Again, Robert Hughes, basketball Hall of Famer, dead at the age of 96. Got some sad news yesterday, folks, when entrepreneur, philanthropist, and prominent member of Alpha Phi Alpha, Dr. William Picard, died Wednesday morning at his home in West Palm Beach. He was 83 years old. Picard founded the Global Automotive Alliance in 1989, which has generated more than $5 billion in sales. He was also co-managing partner of the MGM Grand Detroit Casino and the co-owner of 5 black-owned newspapers, including the Michigan Chronicle and the Chicago Defender, which is where I got an opportunity to meet Bill. Dr. Picard donated millions of dollars to local and national organizations invested in the black community, including the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, the Motown Historical Museum, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, the National Museum of African American History and Culture in D.C., Tennessee State, and many, many more. He was awarded the Michigan Lifetime Humanitarian Award in 2019. And in 2017, I had an opportunity to sit down with him, talk about his book on my TV One show on News One Now. Here's that conversation. Bill Picard, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in America, also an alpha man. He was one of the first African-American McDonald's franchise owners and is the CEO of several successful companies, as well as a co-owner of 5 black newspapers. Now Dr. Picard is sharing his keys to success in his new book, that is Millionaire Moves, 7 Proven Principles of Entrepreneurship. What up, Doc?
Good morning.
So here's the deal. A lot of folks want to be successful, but one of the things that I constantly tell people is, you got to pick a lane versus trying to be all over the place.
Initially, I think that is very, very
Well, I said you got to go through one door before you can try to do different stuff.
Exactly.
What was the door for you? What did you first go through?
The numbers business. My family was involved in that business, and I saw the good and the not so good of that business, and that channeled me into social work.
Okay.
My first job was with the Urban League of Cleveland. And I quickly learned that working for somebody was not my thing. And then I stumbled into McDonald's as one of the first black franchises in America. And there's a Chinese proverb that says, as one eats, the appetite becomes wetter. So from McDonald's to automotives, MGM Casino, automotive manufacturing, newspapers. So I've been very blessed. But initially, it was that one thing.
And the reason that's important because, again, the one opportunity, walking through one door opens doors in other different ways. But you also were not, you were agnostic to the area. So to go from McDonald's to automotive to this, that. So your deal was, I want to own something.
Precisely. And preferably, I like to own a number of things that begins to equate to one thing is up, one thing is down. And I hit it at the right time. Detroit was booming when I arrived in 1971, and Coleman Young was a great leader and insisted upon equal opportunities for all of its citizens. And I was able to benefit from that.
You talk to a lot of people around the country. You go to a lot of these various conferences. What's the one common mistake you consistently confront for people who say, I want to be like you?
We have excuses. I have no money, I don't have the right relationships, and I don't know what I want to do. Especially, I don't have any money. Well, if you have money, why do you want to go in business? DuPonts and Rockefellers and some people are not trying to go into more business because they have wealth. And I always ask, what's it mean being wealthy and being rich? When you're wealthy, Oprah, money just works for Oprah. When you're rich, like me and you, we got to get up every morning and hustle.
No, I ain't rich. I ain't even near you, so don't even try that. Angela.
Dr. Picard, just want to say to you, thank you for being a mentor to a young brother called Elroy Saylor and showing him how home ownership, you own a house that has two parts, so the upstairs pays for the downstairs, Greenview.
Wow. Wow.
That's a hug.
Wow. Okay. Of course, he's from Michigan, and he was involved in an early, relevant, moderate black Republican involvement in our state. And we had a lot of support in that regard.
Sure, Michael?
As a millennial, I mean, you know, college debt is like one of the biggest things for younger people, particularly young African Americans. So I guess my question to you is, if you're just getting out of college, you're a young African American, you want to be an entrepreneur, what advice would you give to navigate that?
Get started. Get started. And I would say, in my book, I talk about debt. College debt is one of the few positive debt instruments that I know about.
Okay, can you please repeat that, please?
College debt is one of the few positive debt instruments that I know about.
Why?
Because it gives you one leg on the ladder of success in America.
So, because I constantly say you have to look at college debt in a different way. You buy a car, look, it's going to depreciate. But if you say, I got $30,000 in student loan debt, and then over the course of 10 years, you earn $400,000,
so what?
It actually, it helped you in a certain way, right?
Exactly.
So right now we know that there's massive income inequality, there's conversations about greed. How do you encourage or teach capitalism with a conscience, if there is such a thing?
Well, to me, our community has always been very, very much about sharing. I mean, we don't always have the money, but the missionary board, one of my favorite things is the Dorcas Society of the old AME Church. They were put together in the 1800s for one thing, to help families that were burned out. That was a Dorcas Society. So it's not always about the money. Money is important, but it's about sitting with the sick, helping young kids get to college. All those things are an intricate part of our community, especially our religious community historically.
30 seconds left. When we talk about, I said one of the principles, you talked about people who are smart, but it's not always just book smart.
Well, you know, I'm a solid C student, a very good one. And there's a book that I love to talk about. The book is entitled, A students work for the C students and B students work for the government. And I'm a living example of that.
Folks, the book is called Millionaire Moves, 7 Proven Principles of Entrepreneurship. William Picard.
Weekdays on TV1.
So Bill Picard passed away again, age of 83. He was a great alpha man. Would often see him when I was in Detroit, when I would be, of course, be at various alpha conventions, hugely supportive of so many black causes. And I can guarantee you Bill Picard is going to be missed by a lot a lot of people because of the millions of dollars that he invested back into the black community. And so certainly condolences to his family, folks. That's it for us. Tomorrow, I'm going to be in Atlanta speaking to the 100 Black Men of America. Also, Vice President Kamala Harris continues her economic empowerment tour. She'll be speaking at the conference as well. I will be there covering that. And so we will have all of that. We'll be live streaming that event for you tomorrow right here on the Black Star Network. And so look for our coverage of that on tomorrow's show. That's it, folks. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Don't forget, support us in what we do. Join the Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. And also, don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available bookstores nationwide. Get your copy at Ben Bella Books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, Bookshop, Chapters, Books A Million, Target. Download your audio version on Audible. Folks, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?